Folks, this is going to be a little bit of a fly on the wall, if you like. There's no need for an interview when it comes to two friends sitting at the table in the pub over a pint having a chat. Instead, they've got COVID stopping them sitting in the pub, and the fact that one of them's in London and one of them's in Canada. Minor details. But what we're going to see next is basically a little chit chat between Chris and between Jessica, and they are going to sort of muse over the creation and development of the character of Mina, how Chris came up with the script work, and the interchange between the two of them. But as you'll soon see, it's really just two folk having a wee yarn over the phone, but we're spying. Enjoy.
So as we were saying before, we were so rudely interrupted, Chris. So we're talking about the voices of Dracula, and I feel very lucky. But there's another word for luck, isn't there? Which is I love the idea of serendipity and synchronicity. These S words just they spark to me of when there is something that needs to be born, like a story that needs to be told, or a trend that's about to happen, a zeitgeist. You can't hold it back, and the right people and the right ideas start to emerge, don't they?
Yeah.
So
yeah, you were getting the script in real time as well. I was writing it at 3 o'clock in the morning. I think by 3:30 the first script.
It's just incredible. You were literally I think you are just downloading from Bram Stoker. I'm sorry to take the credit away from you, Chris, but I honestly think that you are one of those sorts of people, and there are people like you that exist that are just kind of open to the ideas, and you don't get in your own way. You just kind of think, I've got this spark of an idea, and now let's go, let's visit a movie theatre in the imagination. Am I on the right track?
Yeah, it was a very loose process. I mean, I was up. I had decided, actually, this is the strangest process. I decided we were going to do an audio. I literally got up at midnight and thought, right, we're going to do an audio series here, and we're going to call it Voices of Dracula, and it's going to be a series of audios featuring some of the main characters from the original novel. And we're going to start to zoom in on them, how they feel, what they were seeing, what they were thinking during it all.
Yeah.
And I liked that idea, so I just started to type. And the first character I started to craft out was Renfield, who's played now by Terry Malloy. And then from that, then I started to craft these stories, these linking stories.
Mm.
And when I got to the Mina character, I think it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. I think I just got off the phone with you and said, do you want to do it?
Yeah.
And you said, yes. And then I started typing, and I just saw you as Mina. That was a really easy process, because when I worked out who I wanted for each of the characters, that character nailed it. Mm-hmm. And we had a good interaction that night. I kind of remember it's a bit fuzzy, but I do think we had that where we crafted the character together.
Yes.
About it.
She just spoke, didn't she? She just, that's what I felt when I read it. I just thought, God, this character kind of is almost like fully formed. And the other thing that struck me, which has only just struck me, is that you and I have been connected through your love of Doctor Who. And in particular, you grew up with the Seventh Doctor. And of course, I played a significant character in one of the storylines. And we're talking about the character Mags, who is an alien punk girl performer in a circus who turns into a werewolf. And all the way through the story, which is how great sort of protagonists happen, is she is somebody who is made to act, or well, she's literally made to perform against her will. And she's got this, she's an inscrutable character and quite enigmatic, and you don't get to find out the full dark story until the end, where she becomes this werewolf. But it did strike me, because I'm working on the stories, I'm illustrating the stories for the Stokerverse, as well as being the voice of Mina. And I got to illustrate Florence Stoker. in the Virgin's Embrace story. And in that story, without doing any spoilers for the audience, but Florence she's an innocent participant at the start. She's on a honeymoon with Bram. They're going to have a nice time and they're going to go sightseeing. And then, because of what happens in the story, she becomes a reluctant participant in a horrific drama, which there's no turning back from. She just is, she's in it. She's in this horror. And with Mina, what I love about, certainly, I was sort of going back to the original classic Dracula story and reading it, and it reads, I suppose, rather like, Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre. These stories were not sold to the Victorian audiences as this is a thriller or a horror mystery. They were just suspenseful stories. And the beauty of them, in the same way that our friend Stephen King writes now, is that you're taken along on this story and you absolutely believe everything. You believe in the environment, you believe in the characters. And the character of Mina is very sensible, very intelligent, sort of a woman ahead of her time, but she's sensible enough to know that you don't step out of place. So she is a Victorian young lady, and there's nothing particularly outstanding, but for the fact that we know that she's very bright, and we know that she's compassionate and really cares about Jonathan. But, of course, she's going to meet Dracula, and horrible things are going to ensue. And what you touched on, what you brought to the story party, I feel, is that you just get into the shoes of this poor woman who's just been trying to do the right thing. She's been trying to protect her partner, and this malevolent narcissist, this rapist, basically, just takes complete advantage of her, and she can't do anything. She's in this nightmare. And I honestly think that when people hear this story, there won't be just one. There'll be a few people that are going to be saying, "Oh my God, this is a Me Too." It is absolutely the Me Too experience. Or, I mean, God, I'm getting shivers now, but it's not just Me Too. But you think about the modern, sex trafficking and things. It's a horror story and it's a fiction, but the feelings and the terrible nightmarishness of it all is it's very visceral, it's very tangible, and you will, I'm afraid you're going to shock people, and it kind of shocked me to do it, which I think is a good thing. I think actors need to be stretched.
Yeah, I know the particular thing you're talking about, and a lot of interpretations have been, erotic. When we look at the original intent of Bram Stoker, I don't think it was necessarily erotic in that context. I think it was about domination, submission.
Mm-hmm.
They're very dark places that Bram Stoker goes to in the original.
Yep.
That I was compelled to follow along with.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of the most uncomfortable pieces of writing I've had to do.
Yeah.
But it's the truth of Dracula. It is all the truths of Dracula.
Yeah.
And one of the other stories I labelled Insidious Design. Dracula has insidious designs for everyone he comes across. And unfortunately, as soon as Dracula crosses your path, you change. So there are every story that I've written in Voices of Dracula are about singular transformations. So we have Renfield's singular transformation. We have the transformation of Van Helsing. Van Helsing and Dracula play a game of chess, mental chess with each other. And people get hurt during that. We have Mina's story. And Mina's story is very important to me because how Mina is represented in most of the sort of popular films and a TV series is that she's very much a willing participant in this, and she's holding Jonathan. If you look at the character of Jonathan Harker in Dracula, there's nothing further than truth. Jonathan Harker survives one of the most horrific ordeals you could ever go through in a castle, in prison. These nightmares, he experienced nightmares.
Yeah.
Is he seduced by the brides? I think in a way he is, and he feels a tangible amount of guilt, that which we
Yeah.
explore in
Mm.
the audio.
Yeah.
And then we come to Mina. Mina, as Van Helsing talks about, is the light of all lights. What that actually means, we don't know.
Mm.
It's just it could be a lovely phrase that Van Helsing is using to charm Mina. It could also be something that Van Helsing sees in her and starts to blossom throughout the book.
Yes.
Mina loses her best friend to Dracula.
Yeah.
She sees Dracula in various forms in the book.
Yes.
I actually quite like how the Coppola film does it, where you actually see him in that bestial form over Lucy, and obviously there's sexual intent in that.
Mm.
Lucy was terrified of Dracula. Lucy's last journal entry, she writes that she is terrified of, and she does keep the garlic wreath around her neck. It's when her mother has a heart attack that her mother's hand, takes the wreath off by accident as she falls.
Yeah.
These ladies are not seduced by a charming, suave, sophisticated aristocrat.
Mm.
They are being used and manipulated. Lucy was being manipulated by Dracula as a challenge to Van Helsing and Van Helsing's hubris. He knew the connections that Lucy had to Seward, and that's how he lured Van Helsing into this game again.
Yeah.
He wanted revenge on Harker. Harker basically defeated Dracula by getting out.
Mm.
And I'm sure that Dracula wasn't happy about being slapped in the head with a shovel.
Yeah.
So he targets Mina. He targets the loves that these heroes have.
Yeah.
And Mina endures through it and then becomes a hero herself.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping in later audios we start to explore that even more. What really happened after the events that we snapshot and recount.
Yeah.
But a really fascinating character that I think has a lot more mileage than people would expect.
No, I totally agree. I think that what is interesting, having had the privilege to explore Florence's character through illustrating her, and actually another female character in The Virgin's Embrace, and now Mina, there's a strong. Bram Stoker has got a strong feminine voice, but it's all camouflaged and allegorized in this story of Dracula. But there's just so much there, so much commentary on Victorian society and hierarchy and the abuse of power, and gender disparity, and so much that makes it. This is what I'm loving about being part of the Stokerverse, as opposed to just another rehashing of a popular mythology, is that we're able to kind of, you're just exploring those places spontaneously, because that is where your mind and your heart takes you, your instinct is taking you. And yeah, I think people are going to really have an amazing ride. They're going to get so much more added to the story. It's not a spin-off. It's like a deeper exploration into the story.
How did you feel whenever you were playing Mina? What kind of voices were tugging at you as you were going through the script?
And well, I didn't have to think about a voice, because really she sounds like me. I could just relate to her, and because of the way the script was written, there was no acting required. It's just the emotions that she goes through are really strong and quite, and very scary. So hopefully that is going to come across in the audio. And I feel very happy in audio, because you're working with your voice. You don't have to have all the other bangs, whistles and bells, or look a certain way, or whatever. You can completely paint the picture with the words and the sounds. So I have yet to hear it, but I know, because I've worked with the lovely Barnaby Eaton-Jones and Joseph Fox, who's the engineer. So I think that it's going to be a pretty epic thing. And obviously we're talking about this on World Dracula Day. So fingers crossed, it's out there as we speak, and people are downloading it as we speak about it.
Yeah, if it is available, I'm not sure. It's all in the can, but I think there's a couple of weeks before it kind of filters through for the various audio providers. But if it's there, we'll get the QR code for people to scan and check it out themselves.
Yeah.
I haven't actually, to date, I haven't actually heard your Mina.
Oh.
I had the privilege. I hadn't heard Terry Malloy's Renfield Dialer, but I had the privilege along with Andy to, as we were chatting to him, he did an impromptu Renfield. I'm not going to ask you to do an impromptu.
No, I can't do it.
But it's such a that jump from us doing graphic novel to and then there's a novel that we're doing with John Peel as well, which we'll talk about in another podcast. But then to go to audio, it's an interesting progression to write for that, and then to tailor that. I mean, this is the beauty of audio. I could ring you up in your morning time and say, I want to tailor this to you. Let's talk through this.
Yes.
And I think it's almost an untapped medium still, even though it's been around the longest. In the sort of the entertainment aspects, but that it's an untapped medium of how we can utilize actors, how we can write, how we can really project the scenes into the audience's mind, but also give them that freedom to craft what's exactly around them in their own heads.
Yeah.
In a way, audio's got that sort of participation with the audience that very similar to a book, but yet they're actually participating in sync with the actors and in sync with the script.
Yeah,
and
that's
what was pulling me towards at midnight at that day.
Yeah.
I was literally hearing this whole thing about, but if you do an audio, you can do it as another book.
Yeah,
audio, you're inviting the fans, you're inviting people to participate with you. And it is actually, it was a very, I'm going to be completely frank and honest, it was a very scary experience to write. That was my first audio I've ever written.
Yeah.
And it was a very scary experience to start that journey of okay, well, I'm going to ask people to start to try and imagine these scenarios and creating. I was quite visceral in some of the content, and I think that was needed. I'm not somebody in my private life who is terribly comfortable with aspects of violence, but when it comes to Dracula, there's a real visceral content that Bram writes about, and it can't really be escaped. But what can be done with it is appropriately explored through adult emotion. I've seen a lot of Dracula interpretations which have been fun but very cartoonish.
Yeah.
What I've tried to do with Voices of Dracula is to invite people on an adult journey. When I say an adult journey, I don't mean that we're going to pepper it with lots of explicit content. What I'm asking people to do is come along on a journey and look at the elements of the book in a slightly different way, but also fully engage with the characters.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward. I'm a bit scared, but I'm also looking forward to the feedback from the fans to see if they've enjoyed it.
Oh well, I think they'll love it, because all the actors involved with your work, Chris, we know, have been not only delighted, but they're just wanting to do more of them and wanting to get other people on board with it. So we're the lucky ones that got there first. And what you say about being scared about writing because you haven't done this particular genre before, but you are a natural storyteller. And I think also that a little bit of naivety can go a long way, because it means you're not hemmed in by thinking about your past glories or whatever, or thinking about, oh, I really want to write like so and so who's a script writer. You just have your unique voice, and it works for this. That's otherwise Dacre would not have put the sword on your shoulder and said, arise. So Chris, you're going to write for Dracula forevermore.
It is, and it's what's really interesting with the Stokerverse is that we do Dracula, but we do other things as well. So we can start to craft various stories. I have actually a storyline for Nina which if it comes well, it continues on after after the Dracula stories. But Mina becomes a very central character, and I'm hoping to invite a very established female writer onto the journey. It is important for me to be authentic, and that was why I collaborated with you on the character. There has to be an authentic female voice. As a guy writing this, I don't have the experiences that others have had in their journeys.
Yeah. Well, you've got your lovely. I'm sure Bonnie can help you out if ever you need a bit of.
Yeah,
How would a woman feel about a horrible vampire cornering her in a dark tunnel? Well,
Well, there are rumours about me because of the garlic allergy and all that. But it's important for me to connect with artists like yourself, and you're a writer as well, and to be able to sit down and say, okay, is this an authentic voice? How do you feel? How do you react to that?
Yeah.
So if we get to do the continuing adventures of Mina, they take on a very specific tone, and we move into the Stokerverse. We still have Dracula in it, but we're moving into another level of the Stokerverse with Mina. I think it's very important to have those strong female characters, and that was something that Bram did very, very well.
Yeah.
He crafted strong female characters.
Mm-hmm.
Lucy's an interesting parallel to Mina. Lucy was Florence, and Lucy were very similar. Florence was courted by many men, including Oscar Wilde. And
That's the thing.
So that was going on. And the interpretation of Lucy, now we haven't quite got to Lucy yet in the Tales of the Stokerverse Voices of Dracula audios. That'll hopefully come in volume 2. And hopefully there'll be a mutual friend of ours that'll be doing that.
Yes.
But the Lucy character is continually portrayed as this very sexual, voluptuous individual because of one line that's in the book, where it's why do I just have to pick one husband? Can I not have all three?
Yeah.
And I looked at this character and I said, well, no, let's take it as a whole. She's looking at every guy who's a suitor, and she's saying, okay, well, what do I really want out of this? Dr. Seward's really driven. He's a really driven individual. He won't have time for family. He's a genius, but she respects his intelligence and his compassion for the people in the asylum, because we were at a turning point in the century where we started looking towards Freud, psychoanalysis, away from the torturous so-called cures for the people who suffered from illness. She looked at Quincy Morris, and she loved the fact that he was a frontiersman, he was adventurous, he was very gallant. But again, he wasn't necessarily good father material. And then we come to Arthur Homewood, and I think the reason that she chose him wasn't because of his wealth, it was because he wanted a family and he wanted to keep establishing his legacy. Yeah. This draws parallels then to Lucy, and the children, when she takes the children in Highgate. Yeah. I do explore this a little bit more in Bedlam, but it's when you mention Florence, you can see that parallel, and then you can see the Mina parallel as well with Florence. Yes. So Bram, I think, has taken the central female character in his life that he loved, and she loved him dearly, and looked at womanhood through that prism. Yeah, you've got it, absolutely. And two really sympathetic characters are crafted, and I know in my heart that you'll have done Mina more than justice, that there will have been some sort of connection that you will have felt that will resonate through if people are listening to it in the car or people are listening to it at their home, it will resonate through the speakers. So. I hope so, because I loved playing her, so I'm definitely on board for doing more. And I saw, by the way, Nicholas, one of our Stokerverse artists, showed me his latest rendition of Mina, and I nearly dropped on the floor because I thought, I don't know whether he did it on purpose, but she looks like me. I have to admit, I worked with him on that. Did you? I don't know if it's my fault. But they're up. Also, if anybody wants to check those out, they're up on the Stokerverse website, www.stokerverse.com.
Yeah.
They're up there. Nicholas is a fantastic artist, and I know that you've been mentoring him along
Yeah.
his journey, and I'm hoping to see more stuff from him soon. But yeah, it's the Mina character. You know, when I sat down to write this stuff, and it has to be said in a very real way, you've been one of my muses. If we go back to how I first met you, when I was a child in Ballymena, a little town in Northern Ireland called Ballymena, and I watched my first episode of Doctor Who. It was actually the episode where you transformed, where Max transformed into the werewolf.
No, it's getting. I'm just going to switch a light on because the only light is the light coming from your screen, Chris, which is why those weird flashing. It looks like I'm in a very spooky, like Most Haunted or something.
So yeah, I'll just continue for the listeners.
Carry on there.
So basically, yeah, I met Jessica on screen first time she transformed into the werewolf. I was terrified. I think I was 6 or 7 years old. My parents vowed I would never watch Doctor Who again. Little did they know that I then started to sneak downstairs when the reruns were on BBC Two later and watch all this stuff. And it was great. But that was my first introduction to you, and it left an impression. And then we reconnected once you started bringing out the stuff with Titan.
Yes.
And I just loved the artwork. I just thought it was beautiful, and we had a really good conversation about it. I think, you know, very strangely, in an unconscious way, that you became one of my muses through that. I've always had a lasting impression of that moment. And then whenever we started to get to know each other as friends, we started to get to know each other creatively, that you became certainly one of the muses for a lot of the
You heard it here, folks.
Yeah,
that is the biggest compliment anyone could ever pay anybody.
Well, it's that thing that I can see. I think it might be because you're such a great actress. It might be the fact you can't slot into roles, and it might be the case that you have a very strong voice when it comes to these characters. Like, I mean, the Mina character is very, very strong, and what I've written is that there's parts of it that we delve into her marriage. We look at aspects of Mina that show how strong she is as a person, but also as a woman. What she's actually been asked to go through, and the events that she encounters. So I think there was a lot of that. So that's when I say you've been amused to that. I'm trying to qualify that without going, oh, but I was a Doctor Who fan, and of course.
No, because that was the start of it. But I absolutely hear you. We have these connections in so many different ways because you are a bit of a Renaissance person. I know that sounds like a grandfalutin word, but all of us actually involved in the Stokerverse, we're all Renaissance people. You know, we have our head in lots of different places. So I think we kind of hit on. I think we're a bit of a soul tribe, to be honest with you, Chris. And how I feel about you is I have 2 beautiful children of my own, and you are like a son to me.
Oh.
Yes. Seriously. Yeah. If you ever want to adopting.
This isn't fair. You're going to get me crying on camera now. But
well,
yeah,
I am so proud of you, and I'm just going to tell everyone before we sign off and we run out of time, but what you have achieved in, well, not only is, I mean, anyone can do things in a short space of time if they want to, you know. I mean, we're in the world of everyone's a star, aren't we? You know, we're living in the Andy Warhol, but you, oh my God, you walk your talk. And you go through the things that you go through, and you're just delivering. I've got to say this now publicly as well, because I am just so amazed, but not really surprised, that the very first book that the 3 of us, you, Decca, and myself, and Bonnie, and Esther Cardella, we've put out The Virgin's Embrace. And let's be honest, you know, like so many books now, they just kind of, they arrive, don't they? They arrive on Amazon and we're in the charts a day after the book's been released. We're in the top 50, and you are ahead of, I'm going to say you, Chris, because you wrote this. this is Bram Stoker's original story, but you have adapted it. It's your first novel, and you have picked Stephen King. Jesus, if you don't do anything else, I think that's just an amazing achievement.
Yeah, it was strange because last night, our publisher, or not to say our wonderful publisher, Paul, sort of.
Yes. Hello, Paul Andrews, AUK.
Hello, Joe. Thanks for putting the book together, mate. The whole thing of here, look, this is how we're doing, guys. And I'm kind of clicking. I remember sending a message to Stanley going, "Is this right? Where are we here?" And then the Stoker McAuley corporate company that I'm a co-owner of, we have a wonderful director called Kate. And Kate, I was like, "Kate, are you sure this is?" And she was like, "Oh my God, this is incredible." And then it started to sink in. So what my wife decided to do was buy a bottle of wine and get a takeaway steak. And that was a really nice evening, just sitting and talking.
Oh, well, there'll be many more steaks and glasses of wine to come.
And if my doctor's watching this, I'm very sorry. I had to have a couple of glasses of wine last night. But yeah, it's lovely. I have to pay tribute to my wife as well, and all of us. It's lovely that we have we actually have this husband-wife thing as well, where she's very naturally talented when it comes to the graphic design stuff, and I've been able to say to her, just go and have a go and see what you think. And her lettering was amazing. And I think that your work with Bonnie and the Virgin's Embrace, it just came together like that. And I know when she was chatting to you, she was she loved the conversations. She loved that interaction.
Well, she's done something because she's first time out the gate with the lettering, and it's poetry. She really understands how you get the words to work with the pictures. We are the modern equivalent of illuminated manuscripts. That's what even the word illustrator is to do with. Illustrators are not standalone artists. Illustrators are people who illuminate the words. So the words and the pictures all come together, and it's amazing. And I say that, you sort of people be thinking, but it's not a holy thing, it's not a religious thing, but actually the Dracula story, and certainly the way we're telling it, it's high stakes, the eternal battle of good and evil. Yeah. There you go. That's my take on it.
My final thing, because I know that Andy's popped up just to let us know that.
Yeah, we've got to go. Shut up.
My final thing is that we do have Bram's legacy is very much about good versus evil. It's very much about synchronicity with paganism and Christianity, not in opposition of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the most fascinating things about the Dracula story is that Bram, to the day he died, said it was a true story. It's in the original preface that Dracula is a true story. Now, if anybody wants to read more about that, pick up Dracula. It was written by J.D. Barker and Dexter Stoker. And in the author's notes, he goes into that in detail. I have a little podcast that I recorded, and you and Andy were present for that, and I go into detail about that as well. So we'll make that available.
That is amazing. That is a must listen. Stick that on with your TED Talks, folks, because Chris is a fantastic professor on he's not a declared professor, but he should be a professor on it. He's so knowledgeable.
So folks, our time is coming to an end, and my good friend Andy here is letting us know that. So I hope you've enjoyed this little fly on a wall and a little chat, and pick up Voices of Dracula, which hopefully will be available now, and pick up the Virgin's Embrace, which is definitely available now. And thanks for everybody's support.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye, folks.
But for most people, it will, of course, be, aside from his cinematic appearances, it will be this chap near me, Davros. And Terry has the dubious pleasure, the honour, of having been Davros in several incarnations, having played him in several different story arcs, and on audio, and if I'm not mistaken, on stage as well. So welcome everybody.
Thank you. Welcome yourselves. I'm looking at new genetic material, so excellent.
Okay, I say that for the next half hour, we just sit here and let Terry talk, and we don't even ask him questions, and it will be gold. It will be gold. Terry, I have to start with your audio career. You have literally carved out a niche that few others can rival. But can you, for those who sort of listen to these things and don't really understand the art behind that form of acting, how do you approach crafting a character for an audio drama?
As lazily as possible. No. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Audio for me is it's my center. It always has been. I think one of my first recollections of the power of audio was listening to the Goon Show back in the 50s. And my father was in the RAF, we were stationed out at Aden. And my mother was working for the Aden Forces Broadcasting Corporation as a sort of a, Auntie Sheila for the kids and Forces and Family Favourites and that. Well, it was the height of the Goons. And we used to get transcription records sent out to Aden to be played to the troops. Now, transcription, for those of you who don't know, vinyl, probably about 2 feet across, big things, because they recorded the whole thing on one disc, and that was it. Now, in Aden, which, as most of you know, is in the Yemen, down bottom of the Red Sea, you don't get much below 120, degrees, even in the winter. So, in fact, in 1956, which was the height of the Suez Crisis, there was only one building in the whole of Aden, apart from the projection room of the local cinema, that had air conditioning. And that was the studio itself at AFBA. Just the studio booth, nowhere else. The control room, they had to sweat over it. And the record library was outside, where all these wax records were kept. Now you imagine you try to take a record from the record library into the studio, what you get is something that is shaped sort of roughly like that. So the technicians used to put these records between 2 sheets of glass and go and stand out in the sun for about 25 seconds, 30 seconds. The record would just roll straight into the thing on the turntable, play it, by the end of which it was starting to go like that again and out again. So I used to go and listen to these before they went out because my mum was at the thing. And I had a facility for memorizing things as they came out. I just memorized show after show after show of the Goons. And I used to do the voices as well and loved it. But the thing about the power of radio is I suddenly listened to one day, and I can't remember what it is. I think it was the case of the Lone Banana or something, where Neddy was trying to get to South America. So he goes to Henry Crumb's shipping office. And the scene was a bit sort of Henry sort of said, hello, what could I do for you? I said, hello, I'd like to go to South America. All right, I better get some details from you then. Nay, Seagoon. How do you spell it? Seagoon. Seagoon. Address 22 Balls Pond Road, Cheam. 22 Balls Pond Road. It's no good, I'm going to have to get a pencil and write all this down. It actually went on for much longer than that till they hit with the punch. I thought, yes, you've drawn us into this visual thing. The thing about radio is it's incredibly visual because it happens in your head. You create this complete world and you see it all. So the legs can be taken out from under you in a moment. And I was just fascinated by that, So when I used to listen to a lot of radio. I love Journey into Space, stuff like that. I love this, and again, you get this dunk, dunk, dunk going down corridors and the door opens and you don't see anything, but they go, my God, look at it. Oh my God, it's horrible. And you've seen it. You're there. You're in that moment. You know what they're seeing, this alien. And I mean, I basically wanted to be a vet. that was what I wanted to do, is be a vet. But when I got my O-level results, I didn't have one single science subject, not the one. In fact, it took me 3 goes to get maths. So I thought, well, this ain't going to work, is it really? So I just studied music and English lit and economics for my A levels and got through that. And I went to Liverpool to study music and drama because I quite liked that, and I've been in a few school plays as well. And funnily enough, my mother had been on the stage from the age of 12. She was born in Cork, in Fermoy actually, but in County Cork, and moved over to England with her mother, my grandmother, and her sisters, 2 of her sisters, went off when they were in about 12 and joined, and we're talking about the 20s here, a juvenile troupe that was run by one of the big impresarios that went around to all the variety shows. She was in the world of variety. Singer, dancer, soubrette, the whole bit, you know. So I suppose there was something in there. But yeah, I wanted to be. So anyway, I thought, well, I enjoy acting. And so I went to Liverpool, and this was mid-60s. And I basically spent 3 years barely attending a lecture, but playing baritone sax and tenor sax in a soul band in the Cavern and the All Fours and the Blue Angel and places like that, because you know that was a buzz. That was the great thing. I mean, it was like soul. It wasn't northern soul then, but it was just post Beatles, and there was a great buzz going around Liverpool at the time, and I had a great time, really did. And in fact, we were a very good band, and at the end I was torn when I was leaving whether to go into music or something else. And I thought, well, yeah, I love music, but I'm such a lazy bastard that, quite frankly, I'd have to work really hard to be as good a muso as I'd want to be. And I don't mean a star, I mean a session muso, you know, and a writer, a composer. So I thought, well, acting's a piece of piss, really, isn't it? You know, and there are more days off, so I'll go that way. And that's what I did. So I left and started off in a children's theatre company in London and moved on to rep and everything. And after a while, I left and rep in Stoke-on-Trent in about 1971. I moved down to Birmingham and started to get working in theatre there, but also working on radio at the BBC. And I loved it. I just loved it. It was such a buzz being in this, you know, I loved theatre because that kind of regenerates your creative batteries inside. But being in a studio and faced with a microphone, and you think, well, you've got to create all this, and you've got to paint the visual picture for the one person at the other end of that cable who's listening. And that for me was fascinating, and it was a relationship that I began to establish with them. And I thankfully had some really good producers at Pebble Mill at the time who allowed me to learn my trade at the microphone by constantly hiring me to do things, you know, and you know, big parts, small parts. And that's the whole great thing about it. You could come in, you could be spending 3 days playing, you know, butlers and servants and coachmen and things. The next week you're playing, you know, Pablo Picasso. And that was the way that was the way the ball rolled, and there was no ego involved in it. You know, people weren't sort of, oh well, I can't possibly do that because I was in so-and-so last year. You know, and also in those days, a lot of the people who were big names in theatre and on television treated radio as a joke. You know, it was only when things started to get kind of more hard for them to get work later in the 80s and 90s, you suddenly found them arriving, you know, on radio programs as well, and they suddenly thought, oh, you know, I can earn probably just as much here in 2 days as I would, you know, for a week on television. So it swung around again. But that was my start, really, and that imbued me with the love of it, because there's not much they can do with it. You know, it's me, the microphone, and what ends up on the tape. On television, they can shoot it from all sorts of angles, you know, black my face out with lighting, whatever it may be. And what my performance is kind of subjected to somebody else's creative input. My performance on a microphone is me. And unless they want to change it completely, I'm putting in a giant echo chamber, which I don't mind. it is you and the listener, and that for me. Plus, hey, I know I don't look it, but I could possibly still play 35, on radio, which no way am I going to be able to do on telly, and yeah, I mean, you're not bound by the physicality of who you are or what you are, or and vocally, if you can produce the accent, you can be anyone, young, old, different genders, different races. I mean, I know it's all very much diversity now. I mean, I did many years ago, when you were doing radio plays and you play about 4 different characters because they couldn't afford, 12 actors, they could only afford 6. And I did a play which was set in the future, in the Midlands, where the West Midlands, Dudley, the sort of museum of old Dudley and everything, was being populated by prisoners. They were made to go and be, people living in the 19th century in this village. And I was playing at one point a really rather seedy American, but they needed a Rastafarian taxi driver to drive him to this place. I had about 4 lines, if that, driving this guy to this place. I got roasted, totally roasted by, wait for it, Jack Tinker, the drama critic of the Daily Mail, that beacon of diversity, that beacon of, giving everybody their due in an ethnic way. I got roasted that I was taking the money out of a Rastafarian actor's mouth. Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, those things have now changed a lot, and rightly so. But in those days, we were churning stuff out at such a rate to fulfill the needs on Radio 4. And it's interesting now that Radio 4 Extra seems to be full of my old performances. They keep coming back out on Radio 4 Extra. Yeah, but yeah, no, I've probably gone way off topic now, but yeah, audio was and is my first and true love as a well, if you can call me a creative artist. I just call myself a lazy bastard, but anyway, yeah. Sorry.
Well, no,
Sorry,
that's fine. To quote you now, the lazy bastard possibly explains then why you landed the role as Davros, given that he gets to sit down for pretty much all of his performance and only has to use one arm. But I mean, how did Davros come out? You were the third person, and I think the longest running then to keep portraying the character. How did the Davros gig come for you then for television?
I achieved the character with the help of the BBC technicians going on strike, because way back in '83 there was going to be Resurrection of the Daleks with Michael Wisher, being directed by, I can't remember the name of the director now, who was going to direct it, and this was all set to go, and the technicians all went on strike for a month. So everything had to be put back a month. By which time the director was working on something else. Michael Wisher was on tour in Australia. There was no Davros, there was no director. So they brought in the king of soaps and things, Matthew Robinson, who's the more famous Robinson's brother. And he'd done everything from Coronation Street to, everything. He'd been there. And I had just finished 6 months of work with him down at TVS on a series called Radio Phoenix, funny enough, playing a radio DJ, who was a bit of a, smashy and nicey and a bit, yeah, great. Here you are, girls. This is one's just for you, yeah. Hey, here we are. There we go. Oh, and so he knew. Well, he rang me up out of the blue. He said, "Terry," he said, "have you seen Doctor Who?" I said, "Well, God, yeah, grew up with it." He said, "So you know all about Daleks?" I said, "Yeah, of course I do." He said, "And what about Davros?" I went, "What? Who?" He said, "You don't know about Davros?" I said, "No, who's he?" He said, "The man who created the Daleks." I said, "Oh, well, sorry, I stopped watching after Troughton because I was at university and having a life and things, I missed Pertwee, I missed Tom Baker, all of that just kind of went. He said, "Oh right, well come down." So I went down to his place and we sat and watched Genesis of the Daleks. He said, "That's Davros." I said, "Oh yeah, I kind of vaguely remember. I may have clicked seeing a picture of that. Yeah, but no, I never watched it." And he said, "Well, that's who we want to bring back, and I want to know if you would do it." And, being a humble person, I immediately said, "Well, no. Have you phoned up so and so? Because he's terribly good. He really." "Yes, I'll do that. Yeah, lovely." Because when I saw it, I thought, this is interesting because you've got a guy in a mask with very little mobility to it. So you've got no expression apart from what the mask was giving you. And he's creating this character with his voice. And if there's one thing I know I can't do, is create characters with my voice. So I thought, yeah, that'd be interesting. So yeah, that's how it came about. Thank you, BBC technicians, for kicking my career off in a particular way, in a certain way, anyway. And the reason I got the job at TVS was thanks to Jasper Carrott, because I'd been picked from nowhere by an audio director I've been working with. Jasper Carrott was doing a load of stuff at the time. Obviously his shows, but he wanted to do a couple of documentaries. One which he did at the Tampa Bay Rowdies in Florida, and he wanted to do one on the Costa del Sol. And he wanted to cast two mates, to come along with him as, three Brits abroad on holiday. And they were going to find all kinds of situations to do mad things with. So it was a bit impro. And I was seen for this, and initially they'd offered it to somebody else, but at the last minute this guy dropped out, and they just rang me up because I couldn't do it because I was actually recording a television in studio at Pebble Mill at the time. So, but they said, "No, we'd like you to come." So I said, "Right, okay, I came." So we did this 6 month thing. Out of that, I got known well by LWT. They put me into Beatles About, and I got an agent from that, and they put me up for Radio Phoenix, where I met Matthew, and so the rest rolls on. So, well, thank you, Jasper, for Davros, I suppose. That's a good one. Thanks, mate. Great, Boston. Yeah, so it was literally it was a mistake. I didn't audition for it. He just said, "You want to do it? You'll do it." Yeah, I said, "Yeah, okay," and I did it, and I loved it. It was great fun. I mean, I wasn't kind of in awe of it because it wasn't a program I was in awe of because I didn't watch it. But I really enjoyed it. Thinking, "Oh, that's it, 2-week job and I'm off and I'm out," But JNT, John Nathan Turner, obviously liked what he saw and had me dragged back to do the second one, Revelation. And that I nearly didn't make the third one because I was actually filming a series for Central called Tales of Sherwood Forest, which was nothing to do with Robin Hood. It was about a wine bar in Nottingham called the Sherwood Forest, which was run by Pete Postlethwaite, who thought that he was Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca. So the whole thing was Casablanca themed. And in that, I played one of basically the Gestapo. There was 3 of us playing basically the Nottingham's version of the Craze. So I was locked into that. And the director there said, "There's no way I can release you to do this." But there was a lot of backstage dealing between the producer of Doctor Who and the producer of Tales of Sherwood, where I was on a kind of lease lend between the two of you. So BBC got me in the morning, Central got me in the afternoon, except when I was filming, when I had to be with them all the time, which meant I only could have 1 day in studio. So some of the stuff I was meant to be doing in Revelation was cut down to just being the Emperor Dalek in the Texas flip top barbecue. That's what I call it, a barbecue. It's flipping back at us, sitting in this sizzling pan, trying to be nasty. Yeah, so that ran on, and then obviously that was the end of Doctor Who classic series. And I thought, well, that's it, fine. It was enjoyable, great, Then when Big Finish started to come in and take things over, I was invited by Gary Russell to come and do a thing called Davros, which was nothing to do without Daleks. It was just Davros and the Doctor. And I loved it. Again, well, I didn't have to put the mask on. I didn't have to do all of that and trundle around. It's the most physically demanding part I think I've ever done. Really is uncomfortable. But that helps to inform the character. And it was interesting when I first put the mask on because, as I say, it was a latex, pure latex mask, rubber latex. It had little or no movement in it. So you really had to move your face when you were talking in order to make any kind of movement on the outside. So immediately you're having to talk in a particularly staccato way and you're getting bloody pissed off because you're in this effing hot mask and you're really getting fed up and the voice goes down and the paranoia comes in and the doctor must be exterminated. So that's how it came together, But I was taking it from the voice. I was taking it from what Michael was doing. And then obviously as we went on, we started to develop the sense of humor that Davros had, if you can call it that. It's interesting. People say, oh, what's it like playing an evil character? I said, I have no idea. I played Davros. He's a nice guy. To him, he's a nice guy. People just get him wrong. Hey, Revelation, he solved the problem of food famine in the universe. Cain was using dead bodies. They didn't need them anymore. What's your moral problem here? Evil people don't really know they're evil. They have a different perception of things. It's us on the other side of the moral line that say that is evil. That is